Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. I thought we could do something a little bit fun this week to round it off and talk about the hypothetical places that Assassin's Creed might go next. Given that Valhalla is out there and has been a roaring success, we will see another one. So I'm very interested to see where it might go next, because there are entire continents that haven't had an Assassin's Creed located on them as yet. So there is a wealth of opportunity for Ubisoft to go interesting places with this series yet. And it is the history that really draws me into Assassin's Creed in a way that other AAA blockbusters, if you want to call them that, don't. I find the gameplay of Assassin's Creed to be just tolerable. It's nothing that exciting to me. And while I don't love open worlds as a rule of thumb either, I find it very easy to forgive all of that within the context of Assassin's Creed, because the developers do such a good job of researching up the history and giving these games a sense of authenticity to when I'm exploring them. So it feels a lot more, the context is a lot more interesting to me personally. I often make the comparison between Assassin's Creed and Dynasty Warriors for this reason. Even if I don't find the gameplay of a specific Dynasty Warriors, or Samurai Warriors for that matter, to be that engaging, I do find the history of them to be so compelling that I can spend dozens and dozens of hours playing these games anyway, even if I'm not enjoying the button pressing bit as much as I might with some other games. It's actually how I got into trouble for enjoying Dynasty Warriors 9 so much. People that are fans of the Warriors series really didn't like that I liked that game. But I did, and I have played it a lot over the years since it was released, and I still play it actually to this day. And again, it's that history context that gets me into it. I recognise that it is not the best Dynasty Warriors title, and on top of that, it's not a particularly great open world game. But the history, the context, the storytelling is what pulls me in, and Assassin's Creed is a lot like that for me as well. Even if I'm not a huge fan of the gameplay in a particular Assassin's Creed, I generally find the history to be quite interesting. But I digress. I'm here to talk about Assassin's Creed, not Dynasty Warriors. And I've got a couple of ideas of where I'd personally like to see the series go next. I would be very interested to hear your own thoughts in the comments after this video. But my top 5 would be these 5. First up, Japan. And I mean, that is the obvious one with me being me, but I will mention it at first and up front. I would really like to see an Assassin's Creed Japan. My issues with the other open world game that is set in Japan that was released earlier this year, and I can't mention it because I get yelled at for not liking that one too much, was largely in the way that it treated the historical context. I thought the gameplay was fine. It was a very good quality open world game, but for me the history was important and they didn't quite nail that. I'm pretty certain that Ubisoft would be more in tune with what I would be looking for from a game like this, and I base that on precedent and the fact that this series has gone to a wide range of different locations as it is, and each and every time the writers that have worked on these games have demonstrated that they understand how to do research and present an interesting story that is contextual and appropriate. So I am willing to give them the benefit of the doubt here and assume that an Assassin's Creed Japan would do the same, and I would find it quite interesting from a historical perspective. Alternatively, Ubisoft might want to do a Assassin's Creed China. Now, Ubisoft might not want to tread on toes after the last game, and fair enough given that it was a very popular game in its own right, but that doesn't mean that the company needs to overlook Asia completely. There are so many moments through history that would make an Assassin's Creed China the perfect setting. There have been times where China, or at least parts of it, have been a colony for Europeans, and the Assassin's Creed format is ideal to tackle the questions and narrative beats of colonial storytelling, and indeed they've done a great job of that with the one set in America, for example. China has also been a melting pot for trade and exploration for a large part of its history. It would be the ideal setting if Ubisoft wanted to do a story set during the Mongol Empire, for example. And of course, you could go all the way back to ancient history with the stories of the Three Kingdoms. There'd be some really great Assassin's Creed stories that could come out of what happened during those events as well. So there are so many different directions that an Assassin's Creed China could go that it actually surprises me a little that so far the only Assassin's Creed that we've had set in China was one of those offshoot Chronicles titles, which was fine in its own right, but I do feel like there is a lot of material there that Ubisoft could explore and probably should, and just haven't done so yet. Third on my little list, I will mention Middle Africa. Now, Assassin's Creed has dipped its toe into Africa in the past by setting one in Egypt, but I would like to see an Assassin's Creed set in a less familiar setting to Westerners. It would also be an interesting opportunity for Assassin's Creed to go much more modern in terms of the setting, because a lot of the ideal settings for a hypothetical Assassin's Creed Middle Africa would be in the colonial or immediately post-colonial era. The one that really springs to mind immediately from my own knowledge is post-colonial Congo, because it was a period of real political tension with separatists running amok in the country, and there was also a meddling CIA and Soviet Union to deal with. Combine all of that together and you have a recipe for the kind of dramatic backdrop that has always done well with Assassin's Creed. If you look at, example, Assassin's Creed Unity, it made a good job of doing something with the revolutionary tones that were running through France in that time. And it would also give players a taste of how the Assassins and the Templars dynamic might have broken down and played out through the Cold War, which is something that I, as a fan of the series, are pretty interested in. I think that particular tension just works really well with Assassins versus Templars. I do understand why Ubisoft has been hesitant to do a story that's too contemporary, because it becomes, a little bit too in close to living memory. But the breakdown of colonial forces in Africa would be an ideal setting for Assassin's Creed storytelling if it was handled well. And again, I am willing to give Ubisoft the benefit of the doubt here. All the 5 hypothetical titles that I'm mentioning is assuming that Ubisoft would do the right thing in terms of getting the right people in to make sure that the story is handled with the appropriate sensitivities. Fourth, I would like to mention Grand Colombia. Now, we've never actually had an Assassin's Creed set in South America, unless I've somehow missed one. Even the Assassin's Creed Chronicles series that I mentioned before has taken us to places like China, India, Russia, and other unusual places that the main storyline hasn't touched. But there still hasn't been one that has been set in South America. The closest we've come is the Caribbean with some of the titles around Assassin's Creed 4. And yet Grand Colombia is absolutely perfect for Assassin's Creed. You have a revolution that is in full swing, and once again you have meddlesome foreign powers like Spain and a freshly formed United States manipulating things in the background. The game would be set at the same time period as Unity, and therefore there would be an opportunity for Ubisoft to closely link this game to existing timelines and events in Assassin's Creed. You could reference and kind of name drop to create that that link, which would immediately pull players in. And finally, I really do think that the world needs to learn more about the story of Simon Bolivar, because he is every bit as wildly interesting as Napoleon Bonaparte. And Assassin's Creed could inspire people to learn more about him, because he is less well known outside of the arena of South America. He's not the same kind of highly prominent historical figure that Napoleon is, but he is every bit as interesting, and I think that people would find his presence in the game to be quite fascinating. Finally, Australia. I wouldn't be doing my job as an Australian if I didn't fly the flag for a hypothetical Assassin's Creed Australia, but I actually do think there would be a lot that could go right with this. Colonial era Australia had some fascinating architecture and aesthetics for Ubisoft's artists to play around with, and because the European population was quite small at the time, Ubisoft could do that thing with the massive worlds of wilderness that they like to do, and that would fit their approach to open world design quite nicely. The native Aboriginals of Australia have a story about their experience with colonialism that really needs to be told and understood around the world, because it is a tragedy, and it is perhaps a story that's undertold outside of Australia. And since Assassin's Creed is increasingly playing with the spiritual side of things too, so, Assassin's Creed Valhalla had those visions of Norse gods and whatever. Let me tell you about the Bunyip. After you finish watching this video, I highly recommend you go and look up images of the Bunyip, because if you ever want to hit players with something truly amazing and terrifying, throw a vision of a bunyip in there. But seriously, Dreamtime stories from Aboriginal storytelling are absolutely amazing, and if Ubisoft were to get the right consultants and advisors on board, because again, sensitivities would need to be observed there, an Assassin's Creed Australia would be absolutely incredible. Those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know your own dream Assassin's Creed locations, settings, and historical eras. This series is not going away anytime soon, given that Valhalla hit new sales records for it. And thankfully Ubisoft does have so many different locations and eras that they could go to. I'd be really fascinated to hear some of your own thoughts about what you'd like to see. Thanks as always for watching. If you enjoy my videos, that little like and subscribe button are there, and please do mash them. Also click on the bell, because that way you'll get notifications when I upload new videos and you won't miss anything, even if you're not on the YouTubes at the time. If you'd like to support what I'm doing with these videos, please do consider backing me on Patreon. Even $1 a month helps me not only with these videos, but also the digitally-downloaded.net website and the visual novels that I do and all the rest of it. And I do want to continue to scale up what I'm doing and finding new and interesting things to do. To do that, I need to have some kind of support. So yes, your support on Patreon is absolutely most welcomed and appreciated. Thanks as always for watching. Have a great day, week, or weekend, depending on when you actually watch this video, and we will see you at the next one.